Welcome back to 40-Minute Mentor, the podcast on a mission to raise aspirations and inspire the next generation of category-defining founders, all in just 40 minutes. Today's episode is a little bit different. The hiring market has seen some major shifts over the past few years, and as businesses continue to navigate economic changes, evolving workplace trends, and shifting candidate expectations, staying ahead of these trends has never been more important than in 2025. In today's episode, we're diving deep into the key hiring and talent trends for 2025. I'll be sharing some of my own thoughts, and we will also hear from some of my brilliant colleagues at Amplified People Group. We'll be answering questions like, how is the hiring market shaping up compared to 2024? What new trends are we seeing? And what are candidates and clients asking more about? And most importantly, what our top predictions are for hiring in 2025. So whether you're a founder planning your next big hire, a talent leader navigating an evolving workforce, or a job seeker looking to understand the market, this episode is packed full of insights to help you stay ahead. So let's dive straight in.
What I've noticed in terms of the market recently, or certainly the clients that I've been working with over the last kind of 12 months, is that as the world is changing and organisations are adapting, there's an increase in what I would say quite novel, unique roles. There's a real challenge there around accurate benchmarking of those roles, both internally and externally. I think there's a really interesting piece of work around job evaluation and how people are kind of compensated in what has been ultimately a really volatile market over the past couple of years.
Definitely seeing less attrition, higher retention. And when you look at the detail behind that, I think, and I need to validate this with some proper data research, but that's because people aren't able to now get these 10, 15 grand jumps just by jumping ship. So I think if we refer back to kind of the post-COVID days, lots of people were seeing either not able to find work, which felt cruel, or on the alternative side, were jumping for stupid salaries in terms of like percentage increase from one role to another, 15, 20K each time they jumped. I think what we're seeing now is that salary benchmarking is leveling out, and therefore companies aren't willing to pay an extra 20 grand for a role they know doesn't necessarily require that. And so it means that startups can now compete again for the really great talent, which is a positive, I think, for definitely for my clients. The trends that we're seeing, so things that I'm finding really difficult actually to manage, is we've got in my companies at the moment, we've got two tranches of people that we're trying to hire. And what we're seeing is we work very much either hybrid or fully remote in most of those companies. And much more of the graduates, more entry-level roles really are desperate for that in-person time in the office. But we've hired their line managers fully remote in different parts of the world. So it's working out how we work that remote hybrid model out. And then we're actually seeing a higher demand for fully remote for the more senior candidates. And candidly, typically across that being female candidates who've got a lot of experience. And the assumption is always childcare, but I don't think it's just childcare. I think it's just a better way of working potentially for those people. So we're seeing like a really interesting balance to be had for our companies around, do we need to go fully hybrid again? How do we make that positive? And then the other thing on the talent hiring predictions, one thing that we're seeing a lot of debate around is, do we really need that role? How can we automate it? Where can we use AI? Which I'm sure you'll hear 100 times over in answering your questions. But actually, there's some amazing people, talent, ops tools coming out. And it's how we harness them, but also keep a little bit of a human touch in the business at the same time.
I think that people really started the year with a bang. I think that this year, more so than other years, there really is an expectation the market's going to turn. I think the stock market going up the last few months, so I think that, you're seeing way more offers, and I think you're seeing bigger offers, right? So I think that from a hiring perspective, you're seeing a lot of companies beginning to adopt a growth mindset again. What I'm seeing compared to 2024 is I think 2024 was still very focused on sustainability, and people were still quite shell-shocked at the fairly sort of bad market, but things are definitely turning now. Trends that I'm seeing in the market, or anything clients or candidates are asking more about, I think you're really seeing a shift toward more specificity. So people don't just want smart people who they think could do a job. They want someone who's done the role and done the sector, right? So I want someone who has done sales to pharma companies, of this size or something like that, right? There's a lot of specificity. And also, I think that one of the interesting things you're seeing is that there's a lot of confusion or just general lack of consensus around AI and like what's acceptable to use in interviews and what's acceptable, for panels or for pulling things together, even CVs, right? It's a weird one because in the tech industry, everybody jumps on the tech, but there's also this weird hesitance around seeing its usage, right? In terms of 2025 talent and hire, like what I see this year going, I think the AI bubble is going to burst quite a bit. And so I think that you're going to just see less emphasis on all that stuff. And I don't think the economy is going to rebound the way people think it is. So I imagine it's going to look a lot like 2023, 24.
I think on the client and candidate side, I'm seeing a few things come up more and more. For clients, there's a big push for precision hiring. That's less about filling a role more quickly and more about finding leaders who are genuinely aligned with their vision and long-term business strategy. There's also a lot more demand for diverse, non-traditional backgrounds, especially for the C-suite roles. On the candidate's perspective, I think flexibility is still king for them. I think even at the exec level, people are prioritizing roles that offer hybrid working and more meaningful impact over just big compensation packages. There's also a big demand for fractional and advisory roles that senior level candidates want to do, which again gives them flexibility, but also gives them more experience that they can help, say, a couple of companies 2 days a week each and still have 1 day for themselves and their family. Talking about some hiring predictions, I think we'll see, again, tighter job market for execs, going back to the point where companies are being super selective, but when they do hire, they know what they want and they do move fast. There's also a lot of cross-industry hiring. So leaders from traditional tech stepping into health tech, climate tech, property tech, because fresh perspectives are valued, and I think that's quite exciting for them. Looking at long-term picture again, succession planning getting serious. So boards are thinking long-term, and there's a lot more demand for leaders who can develop the next wave of talent and not just hit short-term goals. So yeah, exciting times ahead.
So 2025 has started incredibly busy for JBM, which as an executive search firm is a really good thing, and hopefully will give everyone confidence that the rest of the year is going to be, much more positive than 2024. We have probably had the most number of searches come in January than we have done for a very long time, which is wonderful. And it's been a really interesting mix of sort of CEO searches, so founders looking to step aside and hand over to sort of an experienced CEO to take their business to the next level. COO searches, where a lot of companies have decided it's now is the time to really invest in processes, systems, and bring a lot more efficiency to the way their companies run. Another role that we're seeing a lot of, which is a real sweet spot for JBM, is COO search. And that, I think, is reflective of the fact that in recent years, perhaps companies have been much more focused on scaling and driving growth and expansion and revenue generation, which of course is really important. But sometimes that was perhaps at the detriment to growing sustainably and efficiently and being much more cost conscious. We think that's changing now, and the number of COO mandates we've seen in the last sort of 6 months has really ramped up as founders really look for a really trusted number two to really run the business internally, to really focus on driving efficiencies from an operational standpoint, implementing AI as well, of course, and also really looking at culture to retain great talent, which is increasingly important in this market. So I think COOs are in hot demand right now. I think that will continue to be the case for a while. And then, of course, go-to-market hires, particularly in B2B SaaS. We're seeing a number of our clients looking for revenue leaders or marketing leaders. And of course, there will always be commercial go-to-market hiring as well. We've definitely seen a few exciting searches coming down the line on that front as well. And then I think for us particularly, will always be go-to-market hiring, particularly when it comes to B2B SaaS companies. So we've seen recently been working on a CRO search for a Series B enterprise SaaS organization. They're actually really interested in seeing people that have gone through that scaling journey from the revenues they're at now to where they want to go, so sort of tens of millions, but are really focused on not just those that have done that in the good times, but also those that have maybe seen the challenging economic climate, not just more strategic CROs, but actually ones that are incredibly hands-on and really willing to get stuck into sales directly as well. The other big trend we're seeing is chief of staff hiring. I think there's a real realization now about the value a chief of staff can bring when it comes to giving leverage to founders, CEOs, helping with prioritization, and really being empowered to execute on their behalf to really make the business go faster and to cover more ground. So we've seen a few of these searches recently. One of those searches that we're leading at the moment is a really senior version of that role. So somebody that effectively will run the executive team and really sort of number two to the founder when it comes to a sparring partner on strategic decisions. Whereas another chief of staff search that we've been running has a real focus on culture and org design, and it will be very operational, looking at ways to fix and evolve processes and systems and really to drive alignment across the organization. I think those are some of the roles that we're seeing coming down the line. I think in terms of trends we're seeing in the market, I think candidates continue to be very much driven by purpose. A lot of people I've spoken to recently are really interested in the health and well-being space. So I think that continues to be a trend. Climate is also at the top of a lot of our candidates lists. So that becomes important. We're also seeing continual demand for more flexible working, so fractional careers. Had lots of conversations about that this year already, and that's a trend that we've seen for a while, but it continues to evolve as a lot of talent looks to have greater flexibility and freedom with how they work. And sometimes that's because they want to try before they buy, and others it's because they just want to embrace this more portfolio way of working. So that's definitely another trend. And finally, I think we've seen a trend where candidates are not always focused on wanting to work for VC-backed businesses. We've seen a lot of interest from candidates about runway and actually how stable companies are, and therefore they might be looking at moving into a private equity backed business or a bootstrap company, or one that's sort of maybe less aggressive in terms of growth, but more stable in terms of place to work. So that's definitely something we've seen in recent times. In terms of predictions for the year ahead, I think this is going to be a great year. I really do. I'm really excited to see a lot more activity this year. I think because of that activity, clients are going to need to move quickly in processes, not rush them, but I think keep momentum up. So having a really structured, really thought through interview process, work with great headhunters that can really bring a lot of value. Yeah, I think it's going to be an exciting year. We're not out of the woods yet when it comes to the economy, but there's definitely optimism. And I can see that it's going to be a busy year from a hiring standpoint. So there'll obviously be a lot of money coming from generative AI companies, which is a bit of a given. But I think it's going to be an exciting year ahead. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. I really hope that you found it useful and inspiring. If we have left any questions unanswered, or if you have any feedback or guest recommendations for future series, then please make sure you get in touch on info@jbmc.co.uk. I often get asked by listeners how you can help us spread the word about 40-Minute Mentor. There are two simple ways you can help. Firstly, share this episode on your preferred social media platform, and LinkedIn is probably where I'm most likely to see it. And you can also leave us a review on either Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Every share on social media and review left on the podcast platforms really helps us to get 40-Minute Mentor in front of new audiences and share the power of mentorship even further. Thank you so much for your ongoing support, and I look forward to seeing you again next Wednesday for even more pocket-sized mentorship.